Okay, this one is going to be a little bit more fun, and this one's going to really delve into creativity in sound design, and we're just going to like pull the layers back and really go for the creative element here. So this one's going to be just a ton of fun. This one's called Synth Magic, and it's all about using synthesizers and synthesis to create sound design elements. Now I want to clarify before we get started that the software synthesizers that I'm using for this video are not etched in stone. You can use anything or any type of sound. I'm just going to pick the ones that I normally use, or the types of sound that I normally use, and whatever synthesizers you happen to be using, you can find something similar if you want to, go right along with me, or you can just do whatever you want. Really, it's the process. It's not the specific synthesizers that I'm using or anything like that. I am using Logic Pro for this, and I'll show you how I have my setup here. In the first slot, I have Alchemy, which is native to Logic Pro, and I have a pad sound loaded in there. Kind of an evolving pad. It's called Abstracted Possibilities. In the second slot, I have Native Instruments Massive, and the sound I have loaded in is called Arrival on Pluto. Kind of similar, but listen to it. It's another pad, and for what I'm doing here to show you, to start with here, pads work really well. But listen to this one. Okay, so you hear that it's got that sort of arpeggiated sound that kind of pops in every now and then. I really like that, especially when we go further into this and I show you what we're doing. Those sort of arpeggiation things and the movement is actually really good for what we're going to do. So just find something that's similar. If you have Native Instruments, a couple instances of Massive with different pad sounds, or FM8 or Absinthe, or whatever you happen to have that's just got some pads in it, preferably ones that maybe have a little bit of movement to them or motion, but it's not necessary. And then in the third slot, I've got something that's very abstract, and I got this for free at one point. It's Contact, which I didn't get for free, but this particular module called Kinetic Treats. It's very odd, but listen to it. It's actually really cool, and as you start moving stuff around, the tone changes a little bit. Watch. Pretty bizarre. And I don't know if this is still free. I think I got this about a year ago. At the time, they were running a promo on it, and I got it for free. So, again, if you don't have this particular sound, you can just get some sort of metallic xylophone or something like that, to work. And it doesn't really matter, but something close, something percussive is kind of where I'm going with this. In the fourth slot, I have another Logic synth, and this is just a very basic sort of Moog elastic lead type sound. That's what it's called, elastic lead. Again, it doesn't really matter. Something like that. And again, but like I said early on, this particular process, you can use whatever you want. These are just the kinds of sounds I'm using. And then in the fifth slot, I have an empty instance of Contact, which is where we're going to throw all our samples and manipulate them. So whatever sampler you have is going to work just fine. I use Contact a lot. You can also use the built-in EXS24. That's the Logic sampler. If you have Studio One, they have the sampler built into it. I forget what it's called, Sampler One or something like that, or that might be the Ableton sampler. Anyway, just some sort of sampler is all you need. Whichever one you use is fine, but for this purpose, I'm going to be using Contact. So let's get to it. All right, so this is just one way of doing things. Now, there's a couple of different ways of using synthesis for sound design. There's probably many ways, but there's two that I use in particular. One of them is just taking the synthesizer, finding a patch, and tweaking it, building it out, adding to it, and actually just manipulating the patches and creating my own patches. That's one thing I do a lot. And then the second way, which is what I'm going to show you here now, is creating sounds out of the synthesizers and then making audio files out of them and then throwing them into a sampler and mangling them. This is particularly good, especially with the pads I've got that I'm using. This is particularly good for making drones and ambient patches, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make this some sort of wild, weird, bizarre, almost horror game sort of drone-y, haunted, weird pad. But we're going to do it in a way that is probably not what you think about when you hear them. You probably just picture somebody who found a patch and used that patch, but we're going to create stuff. We're gonna take these sounds and manipulate them. A little bit of effects. Again, the effects that I have are going to be the Space Designer, which is the reverb that's built into Logic. Any reverb will do. And Crystallizer, which I talked about before, which is basically, in this case, we're using a delay, kind of like a weird delay sort of patch. So again, any kind of delay plugin that you have should work just fine. So I'm really just going to go through this and create it as we go, and it's just going to show you how kind of free form it is. I have no specific idea of what I'm going to do except for what I kind of generally do when I'm doing this sort of thing. So some of these patches may change. Certainly it'll never be the same twice. So we'll come up with something fresh, but that's the point, is just to show you how I do this, and then this will just open the doors for you to do your own thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started.